welcome everyone. Welcome to another month of the webinar series with Arjan and the DHIA team. In this month's edition, we are doing something that is near and dear to my heart, something that I truly love, one of my favorite things, and that is marketing. The structure, the style, the ideas, the strategies, the tactics, the ways to view it, ways to sort of have a different angle than many people may have, in order to try and differentiate you. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, you can more or less expect the same results that everyone else is getting. And most of the time, they're not great. So in this month, we're going to sort of dissect some of the different ways that you can market more effectively, differentiate your practice, and find a variety of ways to truly stand out in your market. So as usual, I'm Dre Redfern. We've got Arjan Robbins, founder of How to Manage a Small Law Firm. They manage the CEO, CFO, and CMO of over 600, almost 700 practices, I believe, at this point in time.
It'll be 700 pretty soon. We're over 600.
Yes, it's nearly 700 law firms use them on an ongoing basis. And Daniel's Head is—
Let's say more than 600.
More than 600. And then Daniel's Head insures more than 8,700 law firms annually. So those two aspects combined, I think it's an interesting perspective across the board on the varying topics that we're discussing on a monthly basis. So that said, Arjan, excited to do another month and excited to have some fun again, man.
Yeah, these are fun. Look at you, you're always like in a studio and I'm always doing it from a different place.
I don't think you've been in the same place twice.
I don't think so. Today we're in a new office that we just built that we're going to be building out. So right now it's just an empty shell. And I was just meeting some of the designers and architects here to just plan stuff out. So I decided to do the meeting from here. So here we are.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, I think that's actually an interesting sort of initial foray into this conversation, is that, new office space, but you've already got sort of the branding and the shtick that is going on behind you, the color scheme with some of the logo elements and sort of the philosophy of the brand itself. Is there anything you want to sort of initially touch on, because that is the space that you're building at? And I think it's an aspect of the brand, and branding, I think, is an aspect of marketing. So anything you want to touch on as far as sort of what you're envisioning and sort of what the plan is with that aspect of things?
Well, before we get to that, let me clarify, because a lot of lawyers conflate. I've begun using the word conflate recently. I don't know why. Seem to be using it a lot. Conflate branding, marketing, and sales. And they're three very different things, and it's important not to mix them all together. You will save a lot of money and save a lot of time and save a lot of heartache if you'll separate these three things out. Branding is really speaks to your what you stand for. It speaks to what are your values, what is your mission, why does your business exist? That is expressed through the branding. That's your choice of colors, that's your choice of font, that's your choice of logo, that's your choice of shape, that's your choice of texture, that's your choice of design elements. Are your floors going to be concrete, or are they going to be wood, or are they going to be carpeted? Well, are you trying to communicate a message of pure industrial efficiency? Are you trying to create a more homey, comfortable experience? Or are you trying to make it feel like, someone's living room with a big fluffy couch? That's branding. And a sophisticated brander, who, by the way, not me. I have very, very sophisticated brand people on my team, and they can tell you a lot about what's going on in a brand, even by the choice of font. That's branding. It's decoration. it's the design, it's the style, right? That's branding. And there's lots of people who say, oh, I can help you with the marketing of your law firm. And really all they're doing is branding. And I'm not saying that branding is not important. Branding is very, very important. It's just not the whole package. And then there's people who will talk about marketing. And then within the world of marketing, part of the reason you and I get along as well as we do is because we both are students of what's called direct response marketing. If your marketing is not trackable and measurable and data driven, and if your marketing does not help you build an audience of prospective new clients and help pre-educate and precondition and help get those people predisposed to want to do business with you before they even come into contact with you in the first time. If your marketing is not doing these things, it is not direct response marketing. And I would say it's crap.
I think it's a good way of broaching it. I think I was always told early on that basically, you know, branding is exactly that. It's your logo, your colors, your type, your font, these sorts of things. But it's a play that more bigger brands like a Coca-Cola or something, like they just throw advertising out there because that's branding. Whereas marketing, the better, more effective, more efficient marketing for a lot of SMBs, small to medium-sized business, is exactly what you just said. And that is direct response marketing, where I can spend $1 and get $2 back in retainers, et cetera.
My business this year should do over $30 million. I mean, we're now basically 2 weeks left in the year. So I'm pretty confident saying we'll do over 30. We're already over $30 million. I don't have money to throw away on branding. You know, there are very important and very legitimate reasons that big law firms do image building, brand building, marketing that has nothing to do with actually generating more clients directly, right? Small law firms, a firm that's, I mean, certainly under 20 or $30 million in revenue, you don't have 1 penny to spend on brand building, marketing. All of your marketing must be direct response, direct response, direct response. That's where you spend $1, you can track, you can measure, you can account for the return on that dollar. Now that dollar might come back to you 3 times, 5 times, 10 times over. It might come back to you tomorrow. You put the dollar out today, you get the money back tomorrow with more business. That's, you know, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing when that can happen. Your strategy might be more long-term, where you invest the $1 today and you know that you're going to get $10 back next year, right? But there needs to be a plan before you spend $1, before you let anyone spend $1 out of your law firm. And keep in mind, Dre, when you're spending that $1 in a law firm, you have to earn $3 typically gross revenue to spend that $1. So every time you're spending $1, understand you're grossing 3 to spend 1, right? So when the person says, oh, you know, let's throw $10,000 at this and see what happens, you got to generate $30,000 of new business to throw that $10,000 at to see what happens. And that's assuming you run your business efficiently and you manage your business well, because you might have to generate $4 or $5 in a less well-managed law firm. Anyway, marketing, direct response marketing has to be trackable, has to be measurable, has to be data-driven. You have to capture information. And then anyway, and then the third thing, so branding, marketing, and then sales. Sales is the part of the machine where you convert the prospective client into a paying client systematically, predictably, reliably, ethically, professionally, and profitably. And, you know, everyone says profitably as if it's a bad thing, but I want to ask everyone to consider about this. How about making it a profitable experience for the client, right? Make it a profitable, what, you know, I'm a prospective new client. I've got a problem, which means my life is chaotic and crazy, right? Now I'm going to take time out of my schedule. I'm going to rearrange my work. I'm going to get someone to watch my kids. I'm probably going to change what I wear that day to go to a lawyer's office instead of regular work, right? In many cases, I'm going to rearrange my whole life around this appointment to meet with someone who doesn't even care enough, who doesn't even have enough respect for me, the prospective new client, to do proper, professional, ethical, considerate, educational marketing to help me decide, you know what, this is not the right law firm for me, right? How disrespectful to do that to your prospective new clients, plus your staff, plus yourself. So branding, image, style, which is important, but not everything. Marketing, which should be direct response marketing, trackable, measurable, data-driven, and then sales, which is the process of meeting with a prospective new client in person, by Zoom, over the telephone, you know, however you communicate, to help them make a decision, to help them think through whether this is the right firm for them, and also to help the firm decide, is it the right client for me? Anyway, thank you for indulging my tangent. It all started because you asked me about the decor of the office, which is really just an empty shell. The entire thing is going to look nothing like what you're looking at now.
You briefly showed around before we started. It's very cool. So I think what you just said right now is direct response marketing, sales, which we've covered in a previous session, and branding. I think branding is a little bit too much outside the scope of what we should talk about today. But go down this middle path of the direct response side of things, where it's trackable, and if we can spend $1 to get $1 or $3 or $5 or $10 back. At this point, given this market, sort of the things that are going on right now, what is the initial foray that an attorney should consider on the direct response side? And let me preface that, because with this, a lot of attorneys that we've talked to over the last decade, et cetera, had been basically told the idea or the promise that if I just hang up my shingle, they will come. Build it and they will come. And
some people do. I mean,
and some
people will come.
And some people do come and some people will come. But I think it's the bell curve on that is very skewed to maybe that will take you to a certain level. But if we're talking about, that we're an established practice, we've been around for a decent amount of time, what could I do as an attorney to attract potential clients or prospects sitting out there in the market after hearing about this direct response stuff?
Well, Dre, you mentioned earlier about how if you do what everyone else is doing, you're going to get the same results that everyone else is getting. And if you want to get extraordinary results that are very different than what most people normally tolerate or settle for, you better be ready to do things that are different from what most people do, right?
Correct.
So I'm not going to dismiss or contradict the experience that I know a lot of lawyers have with regard to hang out a shingle, go to some networking events, do all the traditional normal things that lawyers do. I'm not going to say it doesn't work. It does work. It just produces normal results. If you do the normal things that most lawyers normally do, you are probably going to get normal results. That makes sense? Okay.
Very much.
I'm not asking do you understand? I'm asking if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, good. The issue is, do you want to settle for what's normal? Do you want to settle for what's traditional? Because if you do what's normal, if you do what's traditional, you're going to have a $200,000 to $300,000 law firm, and you're going to work around 50 to 60 hours a week, and you're going to, not have tremendous control over your time. And, you might be able to squeeze a 2-week vacation in once a year, maybe once every other year. And typically when you get back from your 2-week vacation, you're going to have a pile of work that you have to catch up on, or you're going to have to take off and do a little bit of work while you're on vacation. That's typical. That's normal. Those are the results you should expect to get if you do what is typically and normally done. And by the way, there's math behind this. This is not just my prescription. This is not just my saying this is how it should be. Like this is me reporting to you, doing this for 20 years. This is a report of what I have seen, and I can explain the math behind it. So I just don't want anyone thinking, oh, I don't like what Arjan's saying, so I'm going to reject what he's saying. It's like saying, I'm reporting how gravity works. I'm not telling you that I like it. I'm telling you how it is. So, if that's what you're aiming for, then you don't need to watch the rest of this interview, because we're going to leave all that behind, right? You're asking me about something that's extraordinary, that's unusual, that's abnormal, something that's different from what most lawyers are doing, and will quite candidly probably get you some ridicule from a lot of lawyers who are doing what's normal. So that's the first part, is you have to just make up your mind. I'm not going to be normal. I'm going to be abnormal. If I want to get abnormal results, better results, I have to be doing abnormal, unusual things.
Yep.
I feel like I've talked too long. I'm going to drink some water and on track. Sorry.
No, you're good. I think that abnormal results, you have to do abnormal things. One of the things I think that the underpinning, or to give this maybe a little bit more structure, is let's talk high level strategy of the ways that some of the ways to think about or operate when it comes to marketing, in particular direct response marketing. And then maybe towards the end, we can get a little bit more tactical of, you can do this thing or that thing or this thing. Because the tactics, frankly, are the sexy things. Those are the things that everyone's like, if I just do this one thing, that's going to be the silver bullet to make it all work. And that's not the reality. There's really no silver bullet across the board in anything. It's an amalgamation or an aggregation of a bunch of different things with a really solid strategy as the underpinning to make these things work. But
I mean, I built a $30+ million business doing just a few things and basically ignoring all of the trends that have come and gone. And, there's people in my industry who have come and gone on the trend, right? I mean, I've been doing this since 2000, and I've been doing law firm management since 1999. So since 1999, I've seen the trends come and go and come and go and come and go. And I've seen the people come and go and come and go on the trends. And whenever you're focusing on the fundamentals and really building a solid business that goes like this, it's always tempting to, there's always that new kid on the block who comes in riding the new trend, riding the latest gizmo technology, whatever, and they grow their business faster than you, and you're like, damn, I'm getting left behind. Maybe I should jump on that trend. But then, 18 months later, where are they? They're gone, right? Because when you are riding the trends, your life is crazy and chaotic. You can't build something that's sustainable. You don't have that sustained growth on growth on growth on growth on growth. Anyway, so I guess that's the first fundamental message, is build your marketing on the fundamentals, right? And if you want to then test and experiment and play around with the latest trends and latest technologies and the latest gizmos and the latest stuff, do that as a test. Don't make that your staple. Don't make that your bread and butter, right?
so with that said, then what would you call the fundamentals of direct response marketing? If we're talking high level strategy, I've only done these few things, not getting into weeds tactic wise. What would those large, key fundamental blocks be?
Right. So the basic strategy for long-term success that everyone watching this, listening to this can follow is you get clear on your message. Why are you doing what you're doing? Who are you doing it for? How will it help them have a better future? 1. 2, you share resources with those people, usually for free, to separate them out from the rest of the herd, right? 3, you have them opt into a list of some kind. Have them separate themselves out, like here's everyone, and have them all join you up there in that corner. Like everyone, if we're speaking to an entire crowd of people, right? We want to get our people to join us up there at the top of those orange spiral stairs. And we don't really care about everyone else, right? So this third thing is get your people to join you somewhere else, separated from everyone else. 3rd. And 4th, educate them so that they can make a decision on their own about when and why they want to work with you, and only you, and not anyone else. If you will follow this strategy, you can build a $10 million firm that's sustainable, predictable, reliable, over and over and over and over, and keeps going and going and going and going and going, right? So it's get clear on who you want to work with, and it doesn't have to be just one. You could have 2 or 3 different avatars. Who are you helping? Why are you helping them? Why do you care? Why do you give a crap about helping them? And how are you seeking to make their life better? Answer those 3 questions. 2, put things out there that is of value to those people. Typically put those things out there for free in order to get them to raise their hand and say, I want to join you at the top of the orange spiral staircase because I'm interested in that message, that solution, solving that problem. I'm interested in that. And then they separate themselves from everyone else.
We call that an ethical bribe.
Yeah. And now that you were an opt-in, or free reporter or whatever, or bait, there's all kinds of words for it, but it's basically giving them something that gives them the opportunity to raise their hand and say, I'm different from everyone else, and I deserve to be treated different than everyone else. And you should now invest disproportionate time, energy, and attention talking to me as compared to everyone else, because I have distinguished myself by going to the top of the spiral or the orange spiral staircase, right? There's hundreds of people down here on the floor. There's 25 people or 10 people at the top of the orange staircase. Those are the hot prospects. They're the ones who deserve the extra attention, right? And this is what I'm doing here on this webinar. You invited me to this webinar series, right? Your 8,700 clients are better than most lawyers, as far as I'm concerned. They're different than most lawyers, as far as I'm concerned. They've already gone to the spiral staircase, right? They deserve more of my attention. They deserve more of my care. They deserve more of my resources, because they've already distinguished themselves by going there, by going away from everyone else towards this message, right? So one is get clear on who you want to help, why you want to help them, and how you're going to help make their life better. Number 1. Number 2, put things out into the marketplace that allows people to self-select and go to the spiral orange staircase. Number 3, have a system in place to continually deliver value, continually help them, to continually educate them, so that they can self-select and decide when and why it makes sense for them to take that next step, to go from marketing into sales, to say, I'm now ready to change from a marketing conversation to a sales conversation. Obviously, they're not going to put it in those terms, but conceptually, when are they ready to go through that gate that separates marketing and sales?
So
that strategy People have been using this strategy, I should mention, for hundreds of years. This is not new. If anyone, this is not, this predates computers, this predates the internet, this predates Twitter. Believe it or not, people were doing marketing before there was something called social media, right? This marketing strategy has been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You know who one of the first Americans is to have implemented the strategy? And by the way, this person became a multi-millionaire, the first American entrepreneurial rock star who implemented this strategy. Benjamin Franklin. You are one of the few people who knows that. Exactly.
I'm a student of all things marketing, so that
this is why we get along. Yeah, Benjamin Franklin was doing direct response marketing way back when. You know, it's not new. The strategy, you can use the latest technology. Yeah, test the latest technology, experiment with the latest social media, experiment with the latest doohickey gizmo, whatever, for the more efficient implementation of a proven strategy. Don't let the technology dictate or replace the strategy. I feel like I need to repeat that.
No, I think it's exactly it.
I
think that if you don't have that figured out, I'm going to go to do Instagram and then TikTok, but then they say LinkedIn, but then I need to go back and do something else. And then you're going to be bouncing around with little.
Well, what happens is you get someone who learns how to use, you get, there's all of these marketing agencies. These marketing agencies piss me off, right? They do such a disservice because you get, the way it works is you get some guy or some person who learns how to use the algorithm for social media, right? Or they really learn YouTube, or they really learn TikTok, or they really learn, they really learn whatever they learn, right? And they don't know the first thing of strategy. And they say, I have a marketing agency. And you call them, I have a law firm and I want to grow my law firm. And they say, I can help you grow your law firm. I have a marketing agency. And you go, okay, what are you going to do? I'm going to sell you TikTok and a YouTube and a Facebook package. Okay, I've never studied marketing in my life. I went to law school. I don't know anything. You have a marketing agency. I assume you know what you're talking about. So I guess if you're telling me that I need Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, okay. And then they say, and they start charging you and they start doing stuff on Facebook and TikTok and YouTube. And the results are, let's just say, somewhat random, unpredictable.
That's a nice way of putting it.
I'm a nice person.
Yeah.
And like if you're a student of marketing, this thing is doomed from the start because they never bothered to ask the question. Who are we talking to? Who is our audience? Who do you want to work with? What's your ideal client? Why do you care about these people? How are you making their life better? And they don't bother to then say, okay, we're going to use TikTok and YouTube and all these different things to do what, right? If the only thing you're doing is to get them to call you and hire you, you're missing the longer term wealth building strategies available to you.
I 100% agree. I mean, I own a marketing agency and we have to combat with that all the time. When it comes with a lot of these elements. I think that you exactly hit the nail on the head, that if there's an element of who, not how. You should understand, in my opinion, you should understand enough of the high level strategy and build the strategy of your marketing, but you don't have to be the one to necessarily execute every position in that, whether that's a TikTok ad or a Facebook ad or a whatever.
So you mentioned the space. That's how this whole conversation started, right?
Yes.
As of today, our website is a hot mess. There's very little that's right about our website. There's a long list of things that's wrong about our website. No, really, it's junk. It's a piece of crap. Our website is a complete piece of crap. It really is. It's off-brand. It's just a disaster. It's terrible, right?
How do you really feel about it?
Because this is not my webinar, I cannot use the appropriate vocabulary to adequately describe how I really feel about our website and the people who did to our website what they did to our website. They completely effed it up. And yet, our business has grown 25% or more year on 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 year. The person who screwed up our website screwed it up in 2017 or 2018.
A minute ago.
Yeah. Now, Arjan, why haven't you fixed it? Well, I've been busy doing other things. And, my business went from the year that this person screwed up our whole website. That year, our business grossed, I want to say, either 10 or $11 million, right? Well, we went from, no, the business gross, 8, 10, like around $10 million. We went from $10 million to $14 million, to $17 million, to $22 million, to $33 million with a complete piece of, off-brand, counter-brand website. Well, leaving aside why didn't I fix it and how much better things could be had I fixed it, here's the point. How do you think I was able to grow my business so much from $10 million to $30 million, even with a screwed up website? That's the power of a strong strategy. The strategy is so powerful that it worked despite a completely effed up website.
I think you're exactly that. Like some of the underpinnings, the tactics can change amongst maybe less than ideal website structure. I think in general, one of the things that we've historically recommended is it's not really worth it to even go down the tactic rabbit hole on cool thing of the day. If you at least do not have some sort of infrastructure with which you can send them to collect their information, we jokingly call it the ethical bribe. It could be a gateway, it could be a opt-in, it could be whatever you want to call it. Right. Because that ends up being the linchpin in a variety of the things that you just mentioned.
But if you don't have a place to bring them and a clearly thought out message that you want to communicate with them and real value, you have to deliver. I mean, like every free report we give is legitimately worth thousands of dollars, right? If you're not delivering real value with your free reports, with your, free is not free. They're paying for it with their time, they're paying for it with their attention, they're paying it with their optimism and their raised hopes that they're going to get something that's going to make their life in some way, shape, or form better. And if you deliver crap, it's hard to regain that trust.
Agreed. So if I'm an attorney, I've passed the bar, I've been practicing, I've hung up my own shingle, I've done, I have a Yelp page or a Google My Business page or whatever those things are that someone told me to have. And I want to start doing the direct response sort of thing. So we've talked about opt-in. If you don't know what an opt-in is, let's go back like very, very basic. some sort of landing page or website that shares information, at least a tidbit of it, and then you have to give your name, usually a first name and an email, in exchange to access that PDF, video, guide, cheat sheet, blueprint, checklist, insert thing here. So if I'm in that category, I want to do more of these elements, but I shouldn't, do some of the advertising, et cetera, before I create this. What would you recommend that it would be the starting place for that attorney to start creating something like that? Where do I come up with the idea to build this cheat sheet, PDF, checklist, whatever it is?
Right. So now we're getting into tactics.
Yep.
And there's some pretty simple things that anyone can do, very inexpensively, and quickly too. One, have a place where they're going to go once they come in the door, right? So once they opt in for your free report, which we'll talk about how to create a free report very quickly in just a few minutes. But just imagine they come into the free report, they opt into the free report. Now, where are they going? You can do something like MailChimp. You can do something like, Infusionsoft, now it's called Keep, is probably overkill for most people at this early stage. What are some of the other tools that you like?
Aweber, GetResponse, ActiveCampaign. The simple one would be like a GetResponse or a MailChimp. If you want something a little bit more sophisticated, it would be like an ActiveCampaign or a Keep, KEAP.
Yeah. So there you go. And basically the idea is that you're going to put your free report or whatever it is out there, and people are going to say, I have this problem, or I have this opportunity, or I have this thing going on in my life that I'm looking for a way to, looking for help with. And I found your free report. The free report could be a PDF. It could be a video. It could be a 24-hour recorded message that I call on the telephone. It could be, send in a self-addressed stamped envelope and we'll mail out to you. I'm using, old day stuff, right? It could be fax back. The point, don't get caught up on the technology. The point is there's some problem that I'm out there looking for a solution to that got me to find the resource that you're going to share. And I want that resource. And so I'm willing to give you my information, my name, my email address, maybe my phone number, maybe a little bit of other information like a zip code or something like that. Maybe I'm willing to do a survey, answer some questions to get the information that you are offering to share with me. And so I'm going to quote unquote opt in for that. And as Aweber, MailChimp, whatever, you use something simple like Aweber or MailChimp. If you don't know how to do any of this already, because those are very, very easy to learn and low investments. That's like $50 a month or something, right? Now, once they've opted in, you need to have a plan to continually communicate with them, right? We've all had the experience of opting into something to get a free report and we never hear from them again. Of course, we've all had the experience of we opt in and now they're just like bombarding us with emails 10 times a day, every day, and like, leave me alone, and then you opt out, right? So you want to have some plan to communicate. Now, the key for the plan to communicate, the key word here, and everyone should write this down, is relevance. Stay relevant. As long as it's relevant, you're always going to be invited back. You're always going to be a welcome visitor, not an intruder, right? As long as it's relevant. So have a plan for how you're going to keep the conversation going. Once you've gone to the top of the orange spiral staircase, you've opted in, you're at the top of the orange spiral staircase. I now need to have a plan for what to do with you to keep you interested and keep you engaged. And to do that, I have to be relevant. So at the top of the orange spiral staircase, there's cookies and there's juice and maybe there's a bar and there's some comfortable seats. And like the VIP area is upstairs at the top of the spiral orange staircase. And that's why you want to go there. But as long as I keep you engaged, once you get up there, you'll stay up there. Otherwise, you'll come back down and you'll join the masses again, right? So notice that we're starting at the end. We haven't got to the beginning of this process yet, right? So it's have a place for them to opt in. That's a MailChimp and Aweber or something like that. Have a plan for what kind of relevant stuff you can continue to share with them that will add value to the relationship, that will help educate them more about their problem, help educate them more about the opportunity, and give them give them a reason. Don't just say schedule an appointment. Educate them so they can come to the conclusion on their own. Hey, wow, you know what? The thing that I should probably do right now is I should probably schedule an appointment. This makes sense to me. Get that in place first before you do the lead generation tool or magnet or free report. People get excited about the free report and they forget about the rest. Build the back end first before you build the lead generation magnet. Now, the lead generation magnet can be very, very simple. If you've been practicing law in an area of law for any length of time, you have a series of questions that you get all the time. You couldn't be practicing law for more than a few years in any given area of law without already knowing the top 10 questions, the top 12 questions, the three things everyone always asks me, the 5 biggest mistakes that these kinds of people usually make, right? So you just sit down and, sit down over a coffee or something one morning or whenever you can think creatively and expansively and start thinking about what are the questions that I'm constantly answering again and again and again and again and again and again. And then you make a free report. And the free report is basically saying, I practice in the area of X. My best clients are always asking me these 7 questions. So one day I decided to stop repeating myself and I decided to just create a free tool that I can give to my best clients to answer their 7 most important questions that they're always asking me again and again and again and again. And if you are struggling with this, if you're searching for a solution to that, if you're trying to deal with this issue, I decided that I would share it with anyone who's interested and not just keep it for my clients, because I believe in being generous and expansive and all that kind of good stuff. And I believe in a world of abundance. And so if you want the 7 most common questions that my best clients are always asking me about that I prepared just for them, give me your name and your email address, and I'll be happy to email to you right away at no charge. I mean, boom, that's exactly what it looks like, right? And like you can literally go back and watch this recording again and just play this, what I just said, a few times, or record it to an Otter or something like that and get a transcript. And I literally just wrote your copy for you. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It just has to be direct, give them instructions on what to do, tell them who it's for, tell them how it's going to make their life better, and why you care enough to do it, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's another thing I got to tell you. Do not let perfection be the enemy of profitability. Profitable and perfect rarely do go together. Imperfect and profitable, they get along great.
There's a saying that 80% is better than 100%, because 100% you're still talking about it, trying to refine it. Whereas 80%, at least you ship it and get it out into the world. It will not be perfect. It's funny. One of my initial mentors in the space, when I first downloaded the ebook like 15 years ago, you paid for it, whatever else. And it wasn't much, like, 10 or 15 bucks, riddled with typos and grammar issues and all of these sorts of things. And I saw an interview of him talking about this years later. It's like, why go back and change it? It was fine. It was like, I was on to the next thing, building the next, aspect of the thing. No one really cared. And frankly, the person that was going to go nitpick all of my grammar issues and all whatever else in it was not going to be the perfect or ideal client for me anyway. So
it's funny you say that. The very first self-study program that I ever sold. So how to manage a small law firm today is the largest provider of CEO, COO, CFO, basically give you personal help, attention, C-suite services to help you grow your law firm. We've got 120 full-time employees, blah, 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 blah. We're the biggest, the best, the fastest growing, and all that great stuff. But I started when I left the Florida Bar Law Office Management Assistant Service, selling self-study at-home courses, right? And the very first course that I sold, it had a typo on the front cover. And I know for a fact, and it was so interesting, I know this for an absolute fact, that typo did not cause anyone to return it and get their money back. This is something that I sold for, I think, $500 or $700 or something like that, right? And the reason that I know this for a fact is because in the 2 years or whatever that I was selling this particular info product, right? I only got, I don't remember, it was like 4 or 5 refunds, right? And the exact number isn't important. The important part is to know that all but one of them came back still in the shrink wrap. Okay. And you couldn't see the typo unless you removed the shrink wrap and opened up the read this first thing. And then you saw the typo right on the cover. Right. So all but one of them, they never even saw the typo. And so obviously that had nothing to do, unless they had X-ray vision and could see through the envelope that was held in place by the shrink wrap, you didn't know that there was a typo. And all but one of the refunds came back still in the shrink wrap. The last refund came back, and you know when you unspiral a plastic spiral bound and then you try to recoil it back in, and you know when you take a stack of paper and you run through a copy machine, and the copy machine has like that wheel and it's got that little crease that it makes because it's an old copy machine, right? Yep. That one came back in that condition. And so I feel fairly confident saying they didn't decide to rip off my intellectual property and then get a refund because there was a typo. That was obviously a unethical person, not the kind of person I'd want to do business with. And to your second point, which I want to repeat because I feel like lawyers really need to hear this, because in law school, we are taught that we've got to have certain things perfect. And the standard of care that is necessary and appropriate and required for the practice of law is completely inappropriate and unrealistic and impossible and unprofitable for the marketing of a law firm. If you try to apply the standard of care that is necessary and reasonable and appropriate and required for the practice of law to the marketing of your law firm, your marketing is going to be doomed. It will be painful. It will be expensive. It will be unprofitable. It will be terrible. And what's worse, if you ever do manage to get your marketing up to the same standard of care as the practice of law, all you're going to succeed in doing is creating an entire portfolio of clients you probably hate working for because they have unrealistic expectations. And, every little comma and every little typo and every little problem, they're going to get all bent out of shape about. When I'll tell you one quick story on this, and I know you want to jump in with something to say or next question. I'm sorry, I got to share this.
You're good.
After law school, I was waiting. I graduated from law school in 2.5 years instead of 3. And so I spent 6 months working for a federal bankruptcy judge. Basically, the deal was I got to work there until I got my bar license, until I passed the bar exam. So I was there for about six or 9 months. And there was a motion that came in from a pro se debtor. There's a bankruptcy judge, federal bankruptcy judge. There was a motion that came in from a pro se debtor, and they assigned it to me to analyze and give the judge my analysis and my recommendations. And the principal qualification that I had for this assignment is the fact that I have the worst handwriting of almost anyone you'll ever meet. And this entire motion was handwritten. It was like 20 pages of handwritten. It looked like he stuck the pen in his nose and wrote it like that. I mean, it was like, it took me a whole day to literally decipher what he had written. I had to go like letter by letter, word by word, and deciphered this 20-page handwritten motion. But once I deciphered what this guy was saying, he actually had a really good point. I communicated his point to the judge, and the judge ruled in his favor. And this was against a pretty prominent bankruptcy law firm in town. The point that I'm making is this pro se, not necessarily highly educated debtor, kicked the butt of this big, fancy, expensive bankruptcy firm with a motion, a handwritten motion that no one could hardly even read. Effective is what works in the marketing of a law firm, not perfection. Don't let perfection prevent you from being effective.
So I think that one of the elements out there that that I think is worth elaborating on is that there's a lot of attorneys that have a sense of imposter syndrome or something to that effect when it comes to putting themselves out there. The fear of being judged, whether that's a video that you put on the website, whether that's doing social media or anything of the like, putting themselves out there, and the potential negative ramifications, the online internet lynch mob that may arise from that. I think it's a natural thing that occurs, but anything that you want to weigh in on when it comes to that, when it comes to the element of putting yourself out there. And
oh man, we could do an entire interview just on this single subject. So I'll start talking and you just raise your hand when you've heard enough and I'll stop. And then we go to the next. Okay. First of all, the thing that stops most lawyers from going out there and doing effective marketing is not imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the buzzword du jour, right? Nowadays, everything is imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome. 5 years ago, no one even heard the term imposter syndrome. 5 years from now, imposter syndrome is going to be like, groovy, or do you dig it? 20 years from now, people who say imposter syndrome are going to be looked at upon like we look upon people who say, gag me with a spoon, right? It's a trendy thing to say right now. It's a politically acceptable thing to say, I have imposter syndrome, and that's why I can't fill in the blank, right? It has the perfect blend of self-deprecation, right? So you're not viewed upon as being a bragging jerk, because it's kind of a little bit like a humble brag to say, I have imposter syndrome, because, basically what you're saying is, I'm so successful, but I'm really humble and I'm self-deprecating and I don't feel like I deserve my success. So I have imposter syndrome, because you can't have imposter syndrome if you're a bum, right? Bums don't have imposter syndrome. Losers don't have imposter syndrome. People who haven't accomplished anything don't have imposter syndrome, right? The only way you can have imposter syndrome is if you have a certain level of success that you want to kind of casually, humbly brag about, but then you want to seem self-deprecating and saying, I have imposter syndrome. Me and my rescue dog have imposter syndrome. You know what I'm trying to say here?
I do.
Right. It's like these people who they can't talk about their dog without mentioning that it's a rescue dog every single time they mention, we got it. You rescued your dog. You're a hero. We understand. Now, can we just talk about the fact that it took a shit on my rug? All right. Sorry. You start. I told you, raise your hand whenever you want me to stop. I'll stop. All right. So there is a legitimate thing called imposter syndrome, and there's a clinical diagnosis around it. But most people have no idea what it actually means. It really comes from a subtle form of misogyny and racism. That's really where imposter syndrome comes from, where you achieve a certain level of success, typically as a minority, but all of your non-minority colleagues basically undermine your confidence in your accomplishments and attribute your success to affirmative action or, or something else like that. There is a legitimate, I'm not going to say that there isn't such a thing as imposter syndrome, but that's not what stops most lawyers from going out there and doing effective marketing.
Yeah, it's the fear associated with putting themselves out there and the rejection probably that goes with that. What
stops most lawyers from going out there and doing effective marketing goes back to the thing we started at the very beginning, which is fear of standing out, the fear of being judged by others, right? It doesn't feel good to get judged and singled out by, as you called it, the online lynch mob, right? Because as soon as you say something that's the least bit polarizing, as soon as you say something that's the least bit exciting, you're going to excite people. And some people are going to get excited in a positive way, and they're going to join you at the top of the orange spiral staircase, and you're going to have a great party up there with a bunch of people who are excited in a positive way by your values and your philosophies and what you stand for. And some people are going to be excited in a negative way, and they're going to become fans of yours. Remember, the word fan comes from the word fanatic. Fanatically good, fanatically bad. Fans, right? If anyone wants to see how much I get it, you can just do a Google search for my name and you can find my fan club. These are people who basically have a lot of time on their hands, apparently, to go online and do research about me and then talk shit about me because apparently they got nothing better to do.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons why they probably don't have very successful law firms or anything. And you have a $30 million a year business is just not really caring or like disassociating with what other people are actually saying or thinking about you.
Well, you mentioned an interesting thing, and I want to speak to that, which is not caring. There's a lot of people out there who will go around and say, well, I don't care what people think of me. I care what people think of me. You care what people think of you. I think it's a healthy thing to care about what people think of you. I think it's not a healthy thing to allow what other people think of you to dictate the choices you make in your life, right? I chose this shirt today because I wanted to make a positive impression on you and your team and the audience of people tuning into this interview. I care what you think. I care what your staff thinks. I care what the audience thinks. I chose this shirt because I care, right? I'm not going to allow your opinion of me to dictate my choices, though, right? I still am going to be me. I think that a lot of people get a lot of bad advice from so-called coaches who go like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. You shouldn't care what anyone thinks of you. Really? Well, let me take off my shirt and walk around naked because I don't care what anyone thinks of me, right? No, we wear clothing because we care what people think of us. We style our hair because we care what people think of us. We paint our walls because we care what people think of us. Branding is because we care what people think. There's nothing wrong with that. You just can't allow what other people think of you to dictate your choices to you in life.
So if someone like that sounds good, and I can get on board with that. But if I'm that attorney and the thought of putting myself out there, like, okay, I shouldn't really care that much, but I should then put myself out there. What is how can we get someone over that curve? Because I think that ends up being the limiting factor that so many people have. Is it's not the first step, because you can almost dip your toe in the water and pull back. It's the second step in creating that commitment where they're then committed to taking that action. Is it to outsource it? Is it to take some sort of option or have someone on the team do it, or it's just to fully commit to it? Like, what would that be when it comes to marketing and actually committing to doing that and putting themselves out there, even though they may not be comfortable with it just yet?
Well, this is such an interesting question, particularly as it applies to lawyers as a profession, right? It's so much more interesting to consider this issue when it comes to lawyers than any other profession you can think of, right? Because the ethos, the fundamental ethos of the legal profession is we exist as a profession to stand up for unpopular causes, to stand against conventional wisdom, to challenge the way things have always been done, right? Where would the civil rights movement be without a bunch of lawyers challenging conventional wisdom? Where would women's suffrage be without lawyers challenging conventional wisdom? Think about anything to do with civil rights, and where would it be? Where would any client be who has a just but unpopular cause if there wasn't a lawyer who had the ethics and the professionalism and the courage and the tenacity to do what's right in the face of judgment, criticism, ridicule by others? You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so the way to the other side of this issue is not, in my experience, to go through it. And I've taken thousands of lawyers to the other side of this issue, where we get to the top of the orange spiral staircase, where there's a much better life waiting for us, with a lot more money and a lot more profits and a lot more peace of mind and a lot more fun. Unfortunately, what too many people do is they try to power their way through it with tenacity and toughness, and they get so beat up in the process that they usually quit and compromise. Instead, there is a side door you can go around. There's a back door to get through this, and it comes from going back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this interview, which is getting very clear on who you want to help. Why do you want to help this person? Why does this matter to you as a human being? Why does it matter to you to help someone get out of an unhappy marriage? Why does it matter to you to help someone make a new life for themselves in this country legally? Why does it matter to you to help someone resolve their issues with creditors? Why does it matter to you to help someone protect their intellectual property? I mean, I could do this practice area by practice area by practice area. When you get in touch with why it really matters to you, right? And who you want to help, who is your avatar, and why does helping that avatar really matter to you as a person, right? Then when it comes to the marketing, what we do is we get you focused on speaking to that person. And when you're speaking to that person, you're not speaking to everyone else. You're only speaking to that person. And you're only speaking to that person's concerns. And you're only speaking to that person's fears and insecurities and situation. and you start getting so focused on helping, on speaking to that, on that person, that the rest of them, it doesn't really matter so much. And rather than just toughing it out, like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me, I'm a sociopath.
Well, I think the shift is more really focusing on the good that you're doing for the people that you can best serve, and not neglecting, but really just not giving it very much time or attention or effort of the people who weren't going to be the right fit clients for you anyway.
Look, you know, I am excited about working with a particular type of person. There's a particular type of person who should join me at the top of the spiral, of the orange spiral staircase, right? This is going to be an entrepreneurial law firm owner, and an entrepreneur who created a law firm, someone who is ambitious, someone who has a really compelling reason why they want or need to build a law firm that works for them instead of just working for their law firm, right? A person who really is willing to step outside of the norm. Because I mean, I'm not sitting here in a suit and tie. You know, there's a lot of great law firm management consultants out there who you can interview, and they're going to have short hair, and they're going to have clean shaven, and they're going to show up in a suit and tie, and they're not going to have a big orange spiral staircase in their office. I mean, they're not me. And I'm not saying anything negative about those people, but they're not me, and I'm not them. And the people who want to do business with them don't want to do business with me. And the people who want to do business with me don't want to do business with them. And the point that I'm trying to make is, when you get hyper focused on who you want to work with, and you just speak to them, you don't care so much about everyone who doesn't want to do business with you, because they don't want to do business with you anyway. And quite candidly, you probably don't want to do business with them, because there's a lot of people who have come to me and said, Arjan, I would love to work with you and your organization. I just need you to curse less often. And I say, well, that's never going to effing happen. So I'm really effing sorry that you can't effing work with us. And I'm sorry. Let me get you a referral to someone who can help you, who will not curse. Arjan, I'd really love to work with you guys, but you know, you need to like act more professionally, and like, you know, I need to see you in a suit and tie. You're not going to see me in a suit and tie. I literally do not own a necktie. I gave all of my suits and neckties away years ago when I decided to live a different kind of, you know, entrepreneurial lifestyle. It's just not who I am, right? And so I'm not going to waste my time trying to communicate and appeal and attract. If I took the suit and tie, no cursing, suit and tie crowd, and I somehow convinced them to get to the top of the spiral orange staircase, you know what they'd find? They'd find a bunch of people just like you and me who they're not going to like being around, and they'd come running back down. And I would have disrespected them by tricking them to go to a place that they don't want to be, where they're not going to be comfortable. You've been to one of our live quarterly meetings.
Yep.
There's 600 very particular type of entrepreneurial lawyers who are there, right? They're Black, they're white, they're Asian, they're Hispanic, they're straight, they're gay, they're tall, they're short, they're older, they're younger, but there's a particular sensibility and sense of humor and generosity and camaraderie that is unique to our culture. And if this doesn't excite you, don't take the first step on the orange spiral staircase, because you're not going to like what you find when you get to the top.
It's very true. I think it's perspective that is needed, not just in the field of law, but across the board. Just being, I think there's an authenticity and congruence would probably be the word that I would put on, of like who you actually are, how you operate your day, your practice, et cetera. That aspect of things needs to be consistent and congruent through your marketing, no matter what that looks like. If you are that suit and tie lawyer, that's great. You can have that and be that. and that could sort of stay a consistent sort of element throughout.
And we've got lots of lawyers who work with how to manage, who they are suit and tie kind of people. They just like to be upstairs where we take the tie off, right? It goes like this, everyone sooner or later figures out the truth about your brand. Even if you don't talk about your brand, even if you have never given 1 minute of thought to your brand, you do have a brand. Everyone does, right? It might be unspoken, but there's a brand there. And everyone eventually figures it out. The purpose of good branding is for you to figure it out so you can put it front and center at the bottom of the orange spiral staircase where people can figure it out before they waste their time going to the top. And I feel like I need to tell people that this is not some fake digital background. That is actually, this isn't office.
It's there.
I hate digital backgrounds. I have such, why would I have a big table and an ugly ceiling? And it's like, I hate digital backgrounds. Anyway, the point is to be respectful of your prospective new clients enough to tell them with your branding, look, here's what you're going to find when you get to the top of the spiral orange staircase. If this doesn't excite you, don't take the first step because you're not going to like where it leads. And the cool thing is the people who like it, they love it. And then they become really engaged.
They become your raving fans, raving fanatics.
Raving fans in a good way, as opposed to raving fans in a bad way. The raving fans in a bad way are very often the people who you trick them to going to the top. They don't like what they find, and then they're pissed off and they hold a grudge. Like, you tricked me, you wasted my time, and you should have told me what I was going to find when I got up there because I don't like it.
Yep.
So that our designs call to remove that spiral orange staircase, and now I'm thinking I might have to keep it.
I think you're like invested at this point with it.
It depends how big of an audience we get here.
So there's been a couple things that have come through. If you have particular questions around marketing on the strategy or the chat side of things, feel free to put them in, and we'll wrap up with some of those here in the next few minutes. So we've talked, the high level strategy elements are, John, of the mindset, the methodology, the psychology of the strategy around marketing, being able to share something of value, lead them in the direction that you feel that you are called to lead your prospects or your clients to, in this instance, up the orange staircase, with some form of, an opt-in or some sort of content or something that shares the top 7 things or top 10 things, or whatever it is that you feel are the questions that you have to answer most often in your law practice.
You want to think of a practical demonstration of what you just said. Okay.
Yeah.
You can share a link and they can, and your audience can opt in, and we'll give them a transcript of that thing that I said and questions they can ask. And if they answer these questions, it'll help them figure out who their audience is, what their audience cares about. Like, I have a series of questions that I can share. And if you'll just think through these questions and answer these questions, you pretty much can articulate the answers to all these questions we've been talking about. And I'll give that as a free report. See, the people who don't care about marketing, well, probably they're not tuning into this podcast and listening this long. And the people who are still watching or listening, they're like, oh my God, that's great. They're halfway up the spiral staircase already. And now I'm giving them a reason to take the next step.
Do you have that handy, or should we follow up with people in an email after this, or include it in the show notes, wherever is included afterwards?
No, what I'm saying is we'll get that portion transcribed so people can have a template that they can.
I see what you're saying.
And I'll give them, and I'll add to the package a series of questions they can ask. And by just asking themselves and answering these questions, they will basically be able to speak to their audience much more effectively.
Love it.
You
I think
know,
it's a great
also-
resource to steer them in the right direction, because it sounds good. Like I can get on board with the idea of creating something, getting one of those services that you just mentioned, a MailChimp or an Aweber, et cetera, and then throwing up that, tying it to my website, whatever that looks like. But what the heck do I say? And I get getting so caught in the minutia of whatever that may be to them. So I think having a guide or a resource like that would be a great value add that we will share with all of the attendees here. If you're watching the replay of this on the video, it'll be somewhere probably below this video. If you're on the podcast version of that, it'll be some sort of link underneath that to go link to where you can go download that resource.
And what we'll do, let's just agree on this, Trey. We'll, at each step of the process, we'll kind of label it so that people know you're in this first stage we are talking about. You're in this second stage we were talking about. You're in this third. So it literally, by opting in and going through this process, you'll literally be getting like a class on how the process works, which you can pretty much just copy.
I love it. Meanwhile, your team is like, oh my gosh, what did Arjan just promise?
This is why it's great to have a team.
It's
you
so
can come up
great.
with
It's the
great
best.
ideas.
Yep. Who, not how. There was one comment that came in I thought was worth mentioning. I literally laughed out loud at Arjan's rescue dog comment. So true. Thank you for verbalizing that observation. So I wanted to share that because I think it's definitely, that was definitely a fun one.
Yes. You know, Peanut, who's a rescue dog, by the way. He's visiting with some friends who also have rescue dogs, because, you know, all of our friends have rescue dogs, because anyway.
It's so true. Same thing with vegans, but we won't go there. There was one comment that came through. Would you mention the tech stack?
Around talking about preaching being vegans. Some do.
Yeah, I've got a few of those. There's one comment that came through saying, can you mention the tech stack again? Yeah. Since Arjan just promised it, we'll include some of those examples in the follow-up that will give a little bit more of clarity and insight of what some of those items would be. Don't get hung up in the minutia. The correct or formal name for what that service is would be an email autoresponder. There's literally hundreds. Most of them all do the same dang thing, so you can't really go wrong with them. So we'll include some of that in the follow-up to this as well. Any other items or things you want to cover, Arjan, before we wrap up this this month's session?
You know, I want to encourage everyone to have a plan in place when you wake up on January 1st for what you're going to do in the first 90 days of the year. Don't wait until January 2nd or January 3rd or January 4th to start planning, because you're already behind. Even if your plan is to do nothing for the first 3 days, wake up on January 1st and do nothing by intention. Don't do nothing by default. I know this is beyond the scope of the topic, but since it is the last webinar we're doing of the year, and maybe if you're watching this and it's already January or February or March and you're watching it in rerun or whatever, maybe it's too late for you to do that, but just always be proactive, always be planning ahead, always know, start the first day of the year, start the first day of the quarter, start the first day of the business month, knowing what you plan to accomplish. And will it ever go exactly according to plan? Probably not, unless you're not planning to do very much. But if you're planning to do much, it'll never go according to plan, but you'll have something to steer back to, which really, to tie this back to marketing, is one of the principal reasons why measurement and data and tracking is so critical, and why direct response marketing is so much better. Should I mention my book?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Automatic Marketing Machine. So I wrote a book called The Automatic Marketing Machine, which talks all about direct response marketing, and you can buy it on Amazon or wherever. I don't have a special link to share. I co-authored it with a friend of mine. It's called The Automatic Marketing Machine. I don't even have a copy of it. I wasn't coming here to plug it, but it just occurred to me a lot of the stuff we're talking about is actually in the book. The point that I'm making is your marketing will never go exactly according to plan. But if you're not tracking it, if you're not measuring it, then you never know where and when and how off track it is. And then you can't steer it back on track. So just make sure you always are tracking everything. And before you kick off a marketing plan, go into it with a plan and an expectation and measurements that you're going to track to see if it's on track or off track, so you can steer it back on track.
I love it. I think that's a good way to close this out. We'll link to the book, and the future
One last
research.
thing.
Yeah.
Beware of any marketing vendors who don't embrace measurement and don't embrace tracking and don't embrace performance. Any marketing vendors who don't start off saying, what are we going to track? What are we going to measure? How are we going to know if this is working or not? Run from that person. I don't care who referred you to them, run away.
Agreed. Very much so. It's not discussed much because it's like law. Marketing is there's things are ever changing, and there's like a lot of people that like if you would use law as an example, not understanding the makeup of a bankruptcy or a divorce and looking to that person to help them solve their issue because I don't know about it. It's the same thing with a lot of marketers. I have this issue, I want leads, I want whatever it is, and they don't know how the sausage is made, if you will. The difference with marketers is it's a lot more ethereal, and there's a lot more creative elements, and it's just not tracked the same way that many other professions are. So I wholeheartedly agree with our John.
I mean, imagine a lawyer, pick a practice area. Maybe
just mention
someone in the
bankruptcies.
audience- Let's see if someone in the audience wants to pick a practice area.
Family law.
Family law. Imagine the person who goes to see a family law attorney, and the family law attorney says, okay, how old are you? Do you have children? List of all your assets. You know, they gather all the facts and information about your case, and they say, great, I know what to do. And they just start running with your case. But they don't actually know what matters to you. They don't know how you're going to evaluate whether or determine whether the divorce was quote unquote successful or not. You know, they get to the end of the divorce and they're like, hey, congratulations, I was successful. And you're like, you've made a wreckage of my entire life. You lawyer, right? And they're like, no. I accomplished the objective. You were married. You came to me to get divorced. Now you're divorced. What are you complaining about? Mission accomplished. And like, you alienated my relationship with my children. You humiliated my in-laws. And now they won't speak to me. You waged war with my ex over nothing. Yeah, you got me divorced, but those were not my goals. Those were not my priorities, right? The marketer needs to really understand your business. They need to understand what are your objectives. They need to understand what are your revenue goals. They need to understand what are your staffing goals. They need to understand why you're doing the marketing and why it matters to you. And the marketer who doesn't stop, and which, by the way, I'm describing like 99% of the marketers out there truly suck. They really do. They really, really are bad because they don't bother to find anything out. They just they're like the divorce lawyer who says, okay, I know the facts and I'll just handle the case and without any of your input. Beware.
I think it's a good parting cautionary tale to end on. I think with that said, I think that marketing is one of those elements that tends to be overlooked. Yeah, you got one more.
I got one more. I would be remiss And I apologize to the whole Daniel's Head insurance team that I didn't do this sooner. I would be remiss if I failed to mention the correlation between bad marketing and high incidence of claims of malpractice. Bad marketing is a major contributing factor to the quantity and the seriousness of the claims of malpractice that get filed.
Define bad marketing for the audience.
Well, I'm gonna come at it in a couple of different ways. One, marketing that gets turned on and turned off, and turned on and turned off, and turned on and turned off. You end up with malpractice claims. Why? Because when you've turned on the marketing and it's feast time, you know, then you turn off the marketing and then it's famine time. And now it's famine time and you're desperate for cash flow and revenue. And so you take a case, you take a client you normally wouldn't take, shouldn't take. And now you've just exposed yourself to a malpractice action, either because you took a case you're not really that great at doing that area of law, or you took it from a client who you knew was a lunatic who's going to file a frivolous, who's more likely to file a frivolous claim, but you turned off your marketing and it went down, 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 down. Now you're desperate, so you take the first case and you end up with a malpractice action. Okay, number one. Number two, the people who I trick into going to the top of the spiral staircase, you know what they end up doing? Being very, very critical of me and very, very uncooperative and very impatient with my mistakes, and much more likely to file a malpractice action because I tricked them instead of being honest with them about the values, the philosophies, and what the experience was really going to be like working with my law firm. And that comes from bad marketing. The marketer who says, what are you complaining about? I got you a bunch of clients. Yeah, but they're not the kind of people I want to work with. They're not going to like my idiosyncrasies. They're going to file a bar grievance or a malpractice action against me when my idiosyncrasies inevitably show up, right? Because my marketer did marketing and brought me the wrong kinds of clients. I don't mean the wrong kind of clients by practice area or legal problem, but the wrong kind of clients by values, by philosophy, by point of view. Those are two examples of how bad marketing leads to more and worse malpractice actions.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to end it on a low note, like don't do marketing because you can have a malpractice action. It all circles back to exactly what we said at the very beginning of all of this. And that is just staying congruent with yourself, your messaging, the type of clients that you want to actually attract, the services that you provide that best help those individuals, and staying true to that, and just leave the machine on, just leave it running. It smooths out a lot of things over a period of time. So you have less feast to famine, and thus less scenarios where you have to turn that thing on and say things that you shouldn't, or take clients that you shouldn't.
And it's so much more fun for you and so much more fun for your staff, which makes recruiting easier, which makes staff retention better. And you get more referrals because people who like to be at the top of the spiral orange staircase like to be around and know other people who like to be at the top of the spiral orange staircase. And so your referrals are better, your cost of acquisition is lower, your staff is happier. So we're ending on a positive note.
Yep, I love it. I love it. We're going to do the same thing next month. More awesome content, ideas, and strategies with Arjan via the Daniel's Head crew. If you have additional questions along the way, just submit them via the Daniel's Head support app or the contact form there. All of these episodes are recorded, so you can add them or watch them later on the site or via the podcast or any of those other elements there. And Arjan, enjoyed it, man. And we'll see you again next month.
Next year.
Next year. That's right. Take care, my friend.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.